Hello and welcome to the At Odds Pod. We are now on to episode 6. We've had a whole host of Premier League football. We've got more coming up, but first of all, I've got to introduce you to the guys. It is, of course, the one and only Mr. Sam Boswell, the one and only Mr. Jake Ashton, and myself, Sam Farley. Look, you know the drill now. We're three friends. We work in the gambling industry. We've taken our betting group chat onto the podcast airwaves, and that's kind of what we do here on the At Odds Pod. And you can find us on social media at the At Odds Pod. But first of all, we're going to go straight to the Premier League, the upcoming games this weekend, and there is a lot to get stuck into.
Whoa.
No.
I think Sam owes a certain fan base a massive apology, number one. And I tell you what, I'll have a massive apology as well. Because if you saw the clip these guys tried to stitch me up with, putting online my best bet for the weekend, which was Forest draw or win, just around even money. And I was the only one of the three of us to get the best bet up at the weekend. So have that, you guys. Farley, you need to make an apology to a certain fan base because they're going to come for you. And I'm not being involved in a Twitter lynch mob because of what you've said. Get your apology in now.
Look, I've for a couple of weeks in a row now, I've maybe put Cheltenham down, said that little old Cheltenham town, maybe they're not that good and they might go down this year. I tipped them to go down. I think I've tipped them to lose nearly every week. So, there's a lot of angry Cheltenham fans, at least 10 to 15, which I think is probably 50 to 70% of their fan base. And I'm truly sorry. No, I did say that.
He's doubled down. He's doubled down.
No, I'm not slacking them off. I'm just saying there's not many of them. Like white tigers. You don't see many of them. And frankly, you wouldn't want to see one. But what I'm going to say to this, Cheltenham, is you served it to me on Twitter. I got quite a lot of abuse. So credit to you. I have to apologise for saying that you would lose to Exeter. You did beat Exeter. I'm glad you beat Exeter because I don't like Exeter. So very, very pleased for that. So I'm, grovelling apology. Cheltenham fans, very sorry for insulting your club. I'm sure you're going to have a great season.
Well, that was very, that was a bit McGregor-esque as apologies go, but we'll accept it and we better move on, Sam. And what are we going to kick off with tonight?
Well, we're going straight to the Premier League. And on this show, we like to pick out one game as the kind of most important game of the weekend. And generally, if we're honest, it's going to be, 9 times out of 10, it's probably going to have Man City in it, Newcastle, Liverpool, Man United, one of the big teams. This one doesn't have any of the kind of giants, but they are two very well-established Premier League teams. This is Aston Villa versus West Ham on Sunday. It's going to be a really, really important game for both teams because they are both in serious trouble. And I think both Steven Gerrard and David Moyes are two managers who are starting to feel like there's a little bit of pressure on their position. So, look, I'm going to pass it over to you first, Boz. What do you make of this game? And do you have any kind of leans in the way that you think this game's going to go?
Yeah, so first of all, any pressure David Moyes is under is a bit ridiculous. I think the man's worked miracles at West Ham. He certainly, for me, rebuilt his reputation at that club. Let's not forget, you've got to kick off playing the champions. That's a really hard fixture. He's also juggling the fact that they've got these early European games, and I appreciate that, they might not be playing the best teams in the world, but they've still got to get 90 minutes in. They've still got to get the job done. I feel a bit sorry for David Moyes. I don't think he gets the best backing from the board there either. So I've got sympathy for David Moyes. On the other hand, Steven Gerrard, I think, is getting absolutely found out. And I really worry for Steven Gerrard's future at that club. I don't know how he's going to last. It cost me absolute fortunes on day one of the season, getting beat by Bournemouth. I still haven't let that go. But just generally looking at Villa, there does feel like there's something a little bit wrong at that club. Obviously, it felt like they were going to get Sarr over the line. That deal then seemed to collapse at the 11th hour. But they've got plenty of talent in that team. Gerrard seems to fall out with a lot of people. We saw him, obviously, with the Tyrone Mings issue. I don't know what's going on there. As for the game, I'd love to be a bit more compelling and a bit stronger on West Ham. I believe one of you guys are, so I'll leave that up to you guys. Because I just felt that the obvious bet at the moment for a team that haven't scored in West Ham going away to a Villa side that, considering they took the lead against my Palace, I was a bit disappointed with what I saw from Villa in terms of they folded like a deck chair pretty quickly. I'm going for under 2.5 goals at around even money. I think that's where I'll play. I'll be playing the halftime 0-0 as well. This will be cagey. I think West Ham are going to be pretty keen to get a goal, but I don't think they're going to go gung-ho. They're not going to change their style. They still look like they're lacking attacking threat. Declan Rice we'll touch on later. I'm really worried about him. But under 2.5 goals for me, Sam. And I'll let Jake give you his side of the coin.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tight game, as you say, Boz. I think the reason why I've been edging towards Villa is just purely due to that Europa Conference League game this week. Obviously, the first leg they won well, but they've got a second leg coming up this Thursday, I think it is. And again, I just think that it's just going to be a really tight game. I could see it going either way. I have picked Villa to win just purely due to the fact of that game and Ollie Watkins to score, because any chance that he seems to get, and he does get a number of chances too, he puts away. He took his goal well against you, and I just feel that if they are to score on Sunday, it'll be him who scores, but it will be a tight game, as you say. I think there'll be a goal in it, if anything. Farley.
Yeah, so look, I've quickly changed what I was going to pick here. I was going to tell you to go West Ham, half-time, full-time. Because I think we have seen glimpses from them at times. There are some good moments there. I think the new lad they brought in from Italy, Gianluca Scamacca. Am I pronouncing that right? It's Scamacca, isn't it? Yeah, like
yeah.
He looks like a monster in the air. And I do think against Villa, you know, you got Antonio there or thereabouts, you got Scamacca, you got people that can really put in a good cross. I do think he could have some joy, and obviously he's not started in the Premier League yet, but when he did play in the Europa Conference League, he did net a goal. So I was looking that way. But the more I thought about this, obviously, just a little spoiler for the listeners, I think it was yesterday we put in our selections, and I've thought about this through the past 24 hours, and the more I think about it, I think a draw is the result that almost suits both teams here. I think both are in a bit of strife. They're not going to go absolutely gung-ho to try and win this. They need to make sure they're tight at the back. They're playing it safe. Like you mentioned, Steven Gerrard, I totally agree. I don't think he's a great manager. I think Dean Smith was sacked far too soon. And I think part of Gerrard's early success with the Villa was purely because Dean Smith's sort of first month or so was the time that those new signings needed to bed in. And he basically got the joy of the signings without having to worry about bedding them in. And other than the fact he's played for Liverpool before and has some good connections, I don't really see anything from Gerrard to think he's a particularly good manager. Not like David Moyes, who we've seen time and time again. The guy's, you know, he's a fantastic manager in the Premier League. So for me, a draw, it just makes sense. Both managers need to keep this tight. I actually love the Bosses under 2.5 as well. So I potentially consider, you know, doubling those two up, or maybe trying to go for a correct score, 0-0, 1-1, something like that. But I think under 2.5 goals in a draw is pretty much where this game's going to go.
I think the interesting thing is we've all spent the last 15 years or so debating who's better out of Gerrard and Lampard, and now we're all debating who's the worst manager out of Gerrard and Lampard at the minute. And it's a bit mad how the world works, isn't it?
Surely you've got to say, if you were putting them head to head, if I could give you either job and you could take it, you take the Villa job all day long. Lampard's got a much harder job at Everton in my book.
Yeah.
Gerrard's had money to spend. He's got talented players there. I think Everton's a much harder gig. So I've got a bit more sympathy for Frank. I like Steven Gerrard, I should say, as well. Like, people say, oh, well, what about what he did in Scotland? For me, yeah, okay, he was a success in Scotland, fair play. He had one team to get the better of and he managed it. It's different kettle of fish now. And I think with what they've had at Villa, you know, I don't want to see anyone lose their job, but I must say, sack race wise, there was obviously this move for Brendan Rodgers, which I was cheering for, given I put him up in our ante-post preview, which is well worth a quick watch if you want to see back how right we were on some stuff and how wrong we've been so far on some stuff. But yeah, I think out of the two of them, I think just this has got draw written all over it. Farley, I love your bet. Jake, less keen on yours. I think the under 2.5 goals, still prefer my bet to anyone else's. But yeah, I can see the angle on both of them.
Nice. I think we're all right on this, though. That is the most intriguing game of the weekend in terms of what it means to both sides. But what we'll do is we'll look towards Saturday and see what are the best games for that day. So obviously me and Boz have both got a bit of a feeling which the big game will be. But I'll run through the games quickly. Southampton against Man United is the early kickoff, 12:30. You got Brentford, Everton, Brighton, Leeds, Chelsea, Leicester, Liverpool, Bournemouth, and City Palace all at 3:00.
There's one game that matters, Jake. Come on.
The late kickoff's Arsenal, Fulham. But yeah, the City Palace is the one game that matters. Boz, what are you thinking in this one?
Right.
Guys, before you say something, I think as the first game in the At Odds Pod history where our teams have faced each other, I think there needs to be a little side bet on this. Next episode where we're all on, we'll talk about that later. I think you need to wear what do you think is a suitable punishment?
Hang on. I've got to back the team here that are 7-1 to get a result, probably bigger. I haven't checked. Let's have a quick
Life's
glance.
Not fair.
Life is not fair. Sorry, we're 15-1 in places. I mean, that's a weird price. We're going to call it 16s, but 16-1. No way am I agreeing to any kind. Maybe if City trounces 4-0, I'll wear a retro City shirt for the next episode I appear on. How about that? That's as jazzy as it's getting. Because Jake,
Palace beat us, I'll wear a Palace shirt.
Oh well, that's a bold shout, isn't it? I'll be pleased. Listen, quick view of the game from me. We've got nothing to lose going up there. We've got some points on the board now. Had we not been in a position where we'd got 4 points out the first 3 games, I think we'd have definitely gone up there and played with 12 men, effectively 11 men just covering the ball and trying to hold on. I think Vieira might let us have a bit of a go here. And that's reflected in my best bet for Saturday, which is going to be Wilfried Zaha to have a shot on target. He'll play up front for us. He's 5-6. He's 11-4 to score or assist. I was toying between the two. I thought the shot on target was a bit safer. I definitely think, Jake, your defence, considering you shipped 3 at the weekend, is not watertight. I don't think this is a City team that you can sit there and go, they're going to annihilate teams 0-0. Then I would never back you to win to 0, which seems absolutely mad because you do it enough, but you just don't look steadfast. So that's my kind of bet for Saturday. As for the game itself, if we can get a point, I'd be amazed. I'm sure Andros Townsend's amazing goal still gives Jake nightmares at night, but let's be realistic here. City are a very good side. I thought the game against Newcastle did show some chinks in the armour, but I probably came away thinking more impressed by Newcastle and upgrading them than downgrading City at this stage.
I agree. I just think the fact that you got a point at Anfield earlier in the season is going to be massive going in. And we've discussed this just before coming on, but City are playing Wednesday night in Barcelona in a friendly, and it's everything's geared towards City dropping points on Saturday. And I'm not going to tip it. I've got to back my team no matter what, but all I can see is match of the day, them discussing the game and saying, why have they gone to some midweek match, gone to Barcelona, gone to play a game, even if it is for charity? It's just a bit disrespectful towards the Premier League and towards Palace, I think, to be honest.
And that's Vieira's team talk sorted, isn't it? You know, we've got the joy of all week working on this game effectively, and you're going to have to sit there and on the plane back, Pep's going to be sending messages about tactics round to players. And for all your much more talented squad, I don't know. And I did notice if you play fantasy football, there was a really telling quote from Pep about rotation with regards to Haaland, and that's already a bit annoying. And I kind of think, yeah, listen, it's a charity game. I get it. They're trying to raise much needed funds for an individual, but I hate this as a football fan. I hate this whole idea that we're going to play a friendly in the middle of the week. You know, Palace got the Carabao Cup, but they'll play a changed team. It won't be the same faces. I really don't like it, and I think it's a bit of it is a bit arrogant. I do find it a little bit arrogant that Pep thinks he can do this sort of thing, because it's definitely a Pep thing. This isn't a Man City football club. This is a Pep. I want to do this. So hopefully we can put the wind up you, nick a point. I take that all day long. Zaha 5-6 for shot on target.
On the Pep front, I do I totally agree that this is very much it's his former club. And they've basically let him, I'd say, marginally like jeopardize their season just for a bit of. I don't know. I think it's such a bizarre decision. And considering this is the same bloke who spends half his time moaning about too many fixtures, I think it's an absolute cheek. And the first time I can actually feel myself getting annoyed. The first time I hear him over Christmas moan, or maybe in England we shouldn't have it like this. Piss off, pal. Stop playing friendlies that aren't needed. You do my head in.
That's fair.
On the naughty step with Jurgen Klopp for me.
And just a little side note, Palace did beat City 2-0 at the Etihad last season. So if you believe in repeats happening like that, then
and 4-3 a couple of years ago, Jake, as well, with that stunning goal.
You've got it's fair to say you are a bit of a bogey team, yeah, to be honest.
Good.
So away from that game, Farley, what's your pick for Saturday's games?
Well, there's a team that have really impressed me this season, and I'll be honest, I didn't expect them to impress me quite this much, and that's Leeds. I thought Jesse Marsch did a good job when he went in last year. He basically kind of they still kept an element of that Marcelo Bielsa sort of attacking thrust, but he basically made it a bit more rigid defensively and slightly harder working defensively. And they were good down the end of last season. And this season, they picked up a few new players. I think the lad Aronson, the American guy, or one of their American guys now, he looks like a very, very good player. Rodrigo, seemingly, taking up the mantle almost from Rafinha leaving and getting the goals. They look really good. They look like they're working harder than anybody else. They do not stop. They've kept that from Bielsa. And I think it's testament to a guy that a lot of us have been I think if you're an American coach, you have a hard job, to be honest with you, straight off the bat because of just the way things have always been. And I think Ted Lasso hasn't done you any favors either. But ultimately, Leeds have been fantastic, and they go to Brighton to face another team who are just superbly coached. But Leeds are over 3-1 to win, which I think is very, very generous, very nice price, despite how good Brighton are. But the bet I love is Leeds draw no bet at 21-10. So chuck a tenner on that. If Leeds win, bish bash bosh, you've made a nice profit. If it's a draw, you get your money back. And if Brighton win, well, you've lost it hard lines. But I think that's just a really, really good bet. I think Leeds are the value play this slate, and I'd probably rather take the draw no bet and just be a bit safer with it.
It's an interesting one for me, that, because I feel like Brighton have been good this season, like one of the highlights of the season so far. So we'll discuss it further in the Bankers Bust and Draw later, but two of you both expect Brighton to drop points this weekend, which is interesting for me. A quick one for me, for my pick for Saturday's games is even Tony to score for Brentford against Everton. I'll go into the Brentford-Everton game a little bit later in my pick for the weekend, but I just feel like everything in this game has got Brentford win written all over it. I think as long as Everton don't have a good enough striker, and I just can't see him scoring, to be honest. Like, Anthony Gordon leaving for 60 mil is... What are your thoughts on that? Anthony Gordon new to 60 mil?
Right. First of all, I like him as a player. I think he's pretty good. I got no idea why Chelsea are buying him now. It feels a very odd purchase. It feels like the sort of deal that should be done with a loan back for another year. I think he needs another season playing a lot of football. Can see Chelsea ruining him, they've done with English talent before. And I don't understand that move for anyone involved. It's a great move for him because he's going to get paid a load of money and get to play in the cups for a great team. I don't get it. But I know, Farley, I think I saw your tweet. You got a bit of a different view here.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the only person on social media who actually quite likes this. I think he's a very good player. I've seen a lot of people saying, he's played 51 games, only scored 4 goals. But
in a really crap side.
Like, the team are so bad. I mean, he's a kid and he's their best player now, with probably the exception of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He's got tremendous potential, I think. He seems like a leader as well, which is incredible given his age. And is 60 million too much? Yeah, maybe. I'd have thought 40, maybe even 50 is where I'd probably price him up. But I do think there's an element in football. If Tuchel really believes that this is the guy, you just go pay that extra bit of cash. Just get it sorted. Don't do what Man United seems to be doing and haggling over players for years and years like they've done previously. Just go get him. And this to me reminds me of a Sadio Mane transfer to Liverpool. I remember everyone was like, what on earth are they signing some average guy? You know, his stats for Southampton, they're not, groundbreaking. But that was a bad Southampton team, and it wasn't as bad as this Everton team. And putting in with good players, he was so much better. And I think Gordon's going to be definitely a player to look out for, and I think he'll do well at Chelsea if this is confirmed.
One thing I do agree with you on, I think we all get far too hung up on transfer fees as fans. I know people go, it comes out of our pockets because the season tickets go up. It doesn't. It comes from TV money. Realistically, I don't care if Palace signs someone for 40 million and he turns out to be average but good enough to keep us in the league. He's worth every penny. Like, I do get it. Anthony Gordon to me is not worth 60 million, but a player, it's a bit like the Zaha thing at Palace. You know, they slapped a huge price tag on him. A player is worth something to a club, and then his actual value is probably a lot less. But if the club need him, and like Everton at the moment, they'd be mad to let Anthony Gordon go. They're going to need probably 50 million to try and bring in two players to fill what he does for them. So, and also the problem is Everton, everyone then knows they've got 60 million in the bank. So, let's say they go to Watford and try and pinch one of their talents. They know they can drive a harder bargain. So, I don't know. It's all relative, isn't it? And I wouldn't get too hung up. But I still think it's a weird move for Chelsea and completely disagree with Farley on that front. It's a year too early for me.
Just a quick one. World Cup squad, Anthony Gordon, yes or no?
No.
Right now, no.
Okay, fair enough. So what we'll do is we'll go on to Sunday's games now. Boz, I think you should take it away because you've picked a player who ran my team ragged last weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. We're recording this a bit earlier than we like to, but the bonus of that is you get to look at the prices when they come straight out. So this might have moved, but I thought St. Maximin had a fantastic game for Newcastle. Always enjoy watching him. He fits brilliantly, doesn't he, at Newcastle, being a crowd that like entertaining football. I think he's brilliant. Kind of shades to me as a Palace fan. He reminds me a bit of the likes. He's better than him. Yannick Bolasie, he's got a few flicks and tricks. He delivers a brilliant ball. He's 17-10 to assist or score a goal on the weekend. Newcastle go and play a Wolves side that I watched the game against Spurs. They had their moments. I think they'll be fine this year. I don't think they're anything special. Whereas I don't necessarily like Newcastle in terms of Eddie Howe. I've never been a big fan, but I'm wrong. Sometimes you've got to take your hat off and say, I'm wrong. Like, he's really delivering a good team there. And they haven't gone mental in the summer and spent the money we thought they would. They've kept their core there. They've invested wisely in what they've bought. I think they've got a great togetherness. And I think St. Maximin will light things up on Sunday, and I fully expect him to have another big game. I think the bigger problem Newcastle might have with him, if I'm completely honest, they've got to get to a level where they're playing in Europe to keep hold of him. If they don't make that step this season, I can see this boy wanting a move to a Champions League team. If they can get into the Europa this year and have a good cup run, I think they'll hang on to him. But I genuinely think I really like him, and I just think that's a wrong price. It just seems a massive price. I think he'll assist more than score. So 17-10 for either. Happily take that, Jake. Right. Speaking of Jake, you've gone back to the Villa West Ham game for best bet on Sunday, haven't you?
I've kind of covered myself off a little bit here, to be honest, because even though I've picked Ollie Watkins to score and Villa to win as my main pick for that game, I've put Villa West Ham both teams to score no draw as my bet for Sunday because I feel like, as we've touched upon, it's going to be a goal either side for who wins the game for me. I know you've picked under 2.5 goals, but I feel like it is going to be one of them Super Sunday games that have just got goals all over it, to be honest. And I think that both teams to score no draw at 13-8 is my bet. And I have that bet every Sunday for both games usually. Double it up and it's around 6-1. So
anything in the fact that it's a Sunday, Jake, and you're hungover and you just want something to cheer through for the two games? Is that it?
Sunday, payday weekend, Probably have a little rab on each game. Yeah, it's probably that too. Yeah.
That's some illogical betting, and I'm firmly on unders. But Sam, I think you're a little bit in my camp because if this bet comes in, I reckon my guys had a bit of a hand in it. So take us away with your best bet for Sunday.
Look, this isn't a particularly sexy bet, but you can get better than 6-4 on Newcastle to beat Wolves away. Everything that we've seen from Newcastle, they look so much better than they've been in previous years. Brilliant job by Eddie Howe. Defensively, they look pretty strong. I know they conceded 3 to City, but that is an exceptional team, and they were under the pressure in that one. And Wolves don't really have much going on up front, so I think this is Newcastle. 6-4 is a great price. I think it'll be 1-0, 2-0 Newcastle, quite an easy win. Just a really, really good price.
Sam, I sort of flippantly went, I think Wolves will be okay. Do you think there's any chance they'll get dragged into the mire at the bottom of the table? Because they seem to, obviously, every year they have quite a high turnover in the squad. New talented young Portuguese players emerge. We're nearly at an all-Portuguese 11 there these days. But I was really surprised they let the likes of Connor Cody go out and things like that just seem odd to me. Maybe I've been a bit too quick to go, they'll be okay. Do you think there's a chance they could get dragged in at the bottom?
No, not at all. I'll tell you why that is. So last season, I'm going to have to be... This might not be 100% true. I do need to check this. Last season, I think they were 5th in terms of goals conceded behind the traditional top 4, or those that finished top 4. They're very good defensively, and even without Connor Cody, I think he was starting to get kind of sidelined a bit anyway. And even if you look at the league table this year, they are admittedly in 18th in the relegation spots, but they've only conceded 3 goals. There's, Leicester have conceded 8, West Ham 5, Bournemouth and Man United have conceded 7, Southampton 7. They are still tight at the back, and I think that is ultimately the most important thing with any team when they're facing relegation is just if you're not losing games, even if you're drawing, you're going to accumulate enough points just to be fine. So I think they'll be safe. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they're going to be pulling up any trees, but I could see them being 13th, 14th without really.
They need a striker. They need a striker desperately for me.
I think they'll be all right. I know I was a bit flippant with that, but I do think they've got more quality than a lot of the teams down there, and I think they will give the man time. Plus, in January they can spend. I just thought it was very strange to let Connor Cody go. I must say, I wouldn't have let him go to a direct rival.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But if they get real goal scorer in that team, I think they could do really, really well.
Ronaldo. Ronaldo to Wolves. Get Ronaldo to Wolves now. Mendes, get in there now.
I think Mendes is a magician with his transfers, Jake, but I think that would be Harry Potter.
All right, guys. Speaking of magic, it is time for us to deliver some magic with our bankers bust and draw feature. You know the drill by now. Each of us picks a banker, a bust, and a draw. So look, let's do. I'm going to say let's do this a little differently now. I want to hear everybody's bankers. So Boz, why don't you tell us who is your banker first of all?
I've gone for Arsenal at home to Fulham. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Fulham ship goals. Like, obviously, Brentford managed to score 2 against them. Arsenal, to me, I think it's pretty easy on paper to sit there and be impressed by them. I thought they just were very professional against Bournemouth. I think they could have had more. I just think Arsenal are different now. I don't think they've got the soft underbelly that we thought they always had. Brilliant series on Amazon, but you could tell there were some flaws being exposed. And I think Arteta worked really hard to deal with them. So as far as I'm concerned, 2-7, I thought it's a little bit more of a palatable banker bet than it is putting up the nonsense of Liverpool at 1-12. But I'll let you describe why you've gone for them at 1-12, Farley.
Actually 1-7 best price. But
1-7 best price.
Again, this I'm not telling you to bet on these. These are not. This is more just. It's a banker. Again, I wouldn't bet on something that's 1-7. I would never recommend anyone else to do it. But I do just think Bournemouth have been dire. Liverpool have been dire. But if you don't think Klopp's going to absolutely get into them this week, like they are not losing that game, like he is going to kick 7 shades out of them, let's be honest, in training. So they'll be back at it. They'll win quite easily. So that'd be my banker, which leaves us with one man.
Yes, that is me. Spurs is my banker. Because I just think this is a game, Forest away. it's one of them games where they win this and then people will start to think that, right, okay, they've won a tricky away game against the promoted side. They can win those tough games where they're expected to win. I know the Wolves game last week, early kickoff, was one of them, which was a bit stinky, to be honest. But Harry Kane and co are going to create chance after chance. West Ham created a lot of chances against Forest in that game, their first home game that they had. And I think that Spurs will just walk all over Forest.
I agree.
What I will say is, before we go ahead, I feel this weekend's been very tricky for the bankers and the bust and the draw, because I feel you can make a case for every single team this weekend at some point, and that is the Premier League, which I love, to be honest. So,
well, Jake, why don't you tell us? You mentioned the busts. Why don't you tell us who your bust is this week?
This has been a tricky one because I wanted to pick a different one to you two. I've gone for Chelsea at home to Leicester, and to be honest with you both, part of me is not sure why I've gone for this. But
that's the expert analysis we love on this show.
I just feel that Leicester have got something about them where they can pull results out of the bag, and there's a lot of talk around them and Brendan Rodgers leaving, to be honest. And it's one of them weeks where it's make or break for them. And I think Rodgers is the type of manager who will say that to the team too. He'll say, listen, lads, if we lose here, I'm out of a job. Some of you might be out of a job with a new manager. I just feel like Leicester can get a result, and they scored a couple away at Arsenal, and I think that Arsenal's defence has looked better than Chelsea's defence so far this season. So,
fair play, boss.
Yeah, Jake, that's a brave argument you've made there. I think Chelsea be a wounded animal, but I'm cheering for Brendan Rodgers to get the sack, because I backed him at the start of the season, as I put up on here, so that's probably why. So I'm going to reverse logic this, and I'm going to put United up to not get the win away at Southampton.
They won the World Cup on Monday night.
Well, and that's kind of my angle. Anyone would have thought Man United had completed something pretty magical. I think Ten Hag has done a very good job to turn them around very quickly. But there's nothing to say that they're going to come out and play away at Southampton 12:30 on Saturday lunchtime in the exact same manner. I still think there's problems there. For one thing, I wouldn't be shocked if he changes the defence up again. I don't know. I've just got a weird feeling Ten Hag could be a bit Tinkerman here. He said something after the game that interests me. They was asked specifically about Maguire and Ronaldo. And he said, it's a long season and I need to play the team that I sort of see fit for each game. I think that was kind of it. So I don't know whether he's going to be a bit of an overthinker and possibly drop one of the centre-backs that played really well. Logic says he won't, but I really wouldn't be shocked. And I just think United are this team now where I think there's obviously some green shoots, and Marcus Rashford, bloody hell, great to see him back turning up and playing well from an England perspective. I think Southampton continue to surprise me. They went away to get the result at Leicester on the weekend before. Hasselhoeven seems to be a bit safer than he was. I just thought United are odds on. No thanks. I can watch that game and I won't be getting involved. Plus, they've got the classic jinx of the early kickoff, which we all know is a real thing. I thought at the price, I'll leave you alone, Man United. If he puts it together, though, one thing I will say, was it a case that Man United were very good on Monday night? Or was it a case that it's a bit that they were okay and Liverpool were pretty woeful at the back? I just didn't feel like Liverpool's night. I think they made some very sloppy errors. James Milner had the worst game I've ever seen him play. I'll be honest, I don't necessarily think that was Man United impressing as much as Liverpool really being quite moderate.
Potentially. Look, I'm going to give you my bust of the week. And I've already said that I think Leeds are going to do well, so this shouldn't be a massive surprise. But for me, it's Brighton. I love what they've been doing this season. Incredible coaching, but they're 10-11 to win at home. And I look at that. I know they're good, but I look at that set of players and I find it very hard to bet on them at odds on against another Premier League team. So for me, it's got to be Brighton. I just can't take that price. Which leaves us with the draw. So, let's go to Boz now, seeing as we just talked about Brighton.
Yeah, Brighton leads my draw. I think Brighton, as a Palace fan, I find them annoyingly, stubbornly good. Take my hat off. Potter has done a fantastic job down there. Leeds, I think, will be buoyed by that result. But both sides happily take a point from that sort of game. And I could just see of all the games this week, that was the one I could see being a draw. I did quite like your selection as well, Sam, which we'll come on to. But yeah, I just felt there was all the ingredients for a draw between Brighton and Leeds. I can just see Leeds trying to attack a bit too much. Brighton quite happy to sit. 1-1 draw quite easily coming in.
How about you, Jake?
Southampton United's my draw for the weekend. Pretty similar to what Boz touched upon in terms of United. I just think that I feel like I've seen this over the last 5 or 6 years where they'll get a massive result early in the season and all it'll be is we're back. And then the week after, they'll drop points against a team who they're expected to beat. And I think that Southampton early kickoff is a tough game for any side. And I think there'll be a draw in that game. Definitely.
That's fair. So my one is we're going to see a draw in the old Everton-Brentford game. I actually think Everton have been okay. Not brilliant, but okay this season. I think they look defensively a lot better than they did last year. I think Cody has some real leadership qualities that he's bringing to the team. James Tarkowski, very big upgrade on kind of what they had before. And Michael Keane generally seems to be playing in addition to those guys, or Holgate sometimes. But this to me just screams 1-1 draw. It'll be even Tony and Rondon or something like that. 1-1. Absolutely boring game. Both goals scored within the first half. It's one of those. Certainly not one I could really imagine I'd want to watch. But for me, that's the obvious draw. Should we go to the EFL?
Let's go to the EFL. EFL, yeah, I'll come to my bet last because I'm just reading some team news and panicking about how we've got to try and mosey up my bet. But Jake, you think Peterborough are going to get the better of Derby County at 3-1? Why?
I just think Peterborough are a massive price here. One of them teams where I watch the Football League highlights and I think some of these players are too good for that division. And it always seems to be the case, though, where they make the step up and then you have a struggle or they just kick on when it comes to Peterborough. And I just think that Derby side, beatable, Peterborough scored goals, and 3-1 is a massive, massive, massive price for them this weekend at Derby.
I think that is an incredible bet. I totally agree with you. It's Peterborough won 4 of their 5. They've only lost one game, which was to a team that they sort of play like Brazil, but they wear green. And Peterborough are so good. They are so good. And 3-1 against and let's be honest, that Derby team, you've got to remember, is not the team that went down. It's a collection of other players they've got. Yeah. So they're still kind of gelling. It's going to take time. So I think 3-1 on that. I think that's probably the best value bet of the weekend.
It's just too big a price, isn't it? It's too big a price. And Peterborough are one of them teams where I'll always look at their odds for both teams to score and win because it seems like a lot of the weekends, it's a bit of an in-joke that I have with my mates, to be honest. Peterborough both teams to score win. They're getting straight in that acca. And
it's the legacy of Barry Fry, isn't it? You love
probably.
Clips of Bazza down there. But
one thing Peterborough know how to do is sign goal scorers.
Yeah.
They've done it for years and years. They got Clark Harris now, who's got 5 in 5. It's just inevitable. It's what Peterborough are so good at, and I think he'll end up scoring again. I don't know, ridiculous, really.
Okay. Well, before we go to Sam's bet, and he won both of his last weekend. It was me that let the side down, I think, on the EFL treble last weekend. So I do owe everyone an apology there. And weirdly, I'm going back to the well because I think I put Hull up +1 at 6-4, and they got battered by West Brom. Put 5 past them, and it was just ugly. It was really ugly. They have got some injury issues, but they're going to face Coventry, and I'll be honest, I think Coventry are a little bit of a mess as well at the moment in terms of just how they're set up as a team. I'm quite confident that Hull, listen, the team getting pumped happens, right? That's one of those things. But I'm fairly confident that Hull are a better side than that result suggested. I kind of sit there and think Coventry have had a couple of games postponed because of their shambles of a pitch. They went down 3-2 to Millwall a couple of weeks ago, ended up with a red card as well. I don't really think they just strike me as a bit of a mess. And I think Hull can take advantage, injuries or not. I'm pretty sure at the prices, I'm quite happy to be backing Hull, chucking them in the bet at around 7-4. I think that's a big price. Hull are at home. Coventry, not quite up to speed with those postponed games. It's not going to make you particularly rich, but if you chuck it in as one of your ACCA legs, I think it's great. For comparison, Coventry have played 2 games this season. Now, come on, Sam. I'll let you come on to your bets after that. But that's got to be sound logic for why we should take them on. They're going to be still in pre-season.
Yeah, I think that's good logic. I can't fault that.
Yeah.
There we go.
Like that.
That's as much as we're getting from Sam. But let's get your selections, Sam, because that was what I was teeing you up for, and you seemed to blank me. But you're going to go to Oxford. Oh, is there a bit of Cheltenham bashing going on this week?
No. I've got two bets. I've got 2 bets for you today. First of all, under 2.4, we're going to League 2. Under 2.5 goals in Rochdale versus Crawley. Now, these 2 are the 2 lowest teams in the Football League. They're 23rd and 24th in League 2. They've scored 3 goals between them in 10 games combined. They are not good teams. I actually think Crawley the underdogs. If I was to lean either way, I'd actually put money on Crawley. But I just think the unders is such a good shout at 4-5 because admittedly they both ship loads of goals. But this is one of those games where they cannot, neither team can afford to lose this. They're going to go out there. It's going to be the most dire game of football to watch you could ever imagine as both teams try not to lose. But ultimately, I don't see this being high scoring. 4-5, I think, is a brilliant price. And this other one, look.
You're just trolling. Come on.
Earlier on, I gave a heartfelt apology to the Cheltenham fans for doubting that they'd beat Everton. But I'm afraid to say, guys, it is happening again. Oxford will beat Cheltenham 13-10. Yes. Come on, Cheltenham. Sorry,
I don't know if our YouTube channel will survive the nudity ban.
I actually need to put a top back on this. People coming out the window.
Brilliant. So while Sam redresses himself, for anyone that's listening on the podcast, he did just remove clothing at the thought of Oxford beating Cheltenham. Oxford are in action midweek against my Crystal Palace, where I think they'll face a stiff test. And they know they've got their injury issues, but that's how little Sam thinks of Cheltenham Town, which is...
to be honest, I am semi-trolling there, but I do actually think Oxford are a good side. I don't think Cheltenham are that brilliant. And even though Cheltenham are the home team, I think Oxford will do enough to beat them. And Oxford are a sneaky side. I think they're a good team. So 13-10, I think, is a good price.
Right. Okay. Well, with that in mind, we're going to leave the brutal nature of the EFL and head for some European sun. And Jake, you're going to take us through the European footy segment of the show.
Yeah, so I think what we'll actually do is, Boz, I'm going to throw it back to you because you're going to be watching your game in person, I believe.
Yes. So you won't see me for our Premier League midweek special because I'm off to a wedding in Lisbon, Portugal. And like I always do whenever I go anywhere in Europe for any excuse, I try and find a sporting event to go and poke my nose into. So for the last 2 weeks or so, since we managed to get tickets to this game, I've become a Sporting Lisbon ultra. And my mates don't know it yet, but we're going to be sat in the South Stand with the Sporting Lisbon ultras, which would be quite good fun, I imagine, providing we all wear green and they take to us. They played Porto last week in a really good game. If you can go back and watch the highlights, they're all on YouTube. I've been watching a lot of Portuguese football on YouTube. And it was a brutal game. Sporting were really unlucky. They went behind and then the game fell apart. As you can imagine, loads of cards, everything kicked off. And one of their best players got a red card. Now, the kind of bet I've looked at is they're a really short price Sporting to beat Chavez, who the league's only a couple of games old, so they're very close in it. But realistically, Chavez are useless. They got a man sent off in a bad-tempered game last time out. Annoyingly, when we record this, the card lines aren't out. So I've had to look elsewhere for a bet for the game. Sporting are a very, very, very short price. But what I'm going to do is put a goal scorer in there any time. and just flicking through really to try and find a kind of bit of an interesting angle. I found a bet at 7-4, which is Sporting to win, and then we're going to be backing Pedro Gonzalez to score any time in the game. Now, this is a man who I think I must say is possibly a little bit overpriced. He scored a brace in the second game of the season where they played at Rio Avenue. He's also scored in pre-season against Wolves. And when you flick back, you'll recognise this man. He's been kind of around the block a little bit. Sporting kind of, he was at Wolves, then he ended up back out somewhere else. But he's at Sporting. He scored 23 goals in his first season for Sporting. Only 8 last year, but he's 3 games, 3 goals, 7-4, him to score. Match result to be Sporting. So Saturday night, I'll be there, necking Super Bock on the terraces with the Sporting fans, doing whatever kind of version of the Poznan they have. And I've done my homework this week as well. It's not even an uneducated PSG handicap bet. It's just I really quite fancy that him to score. And I look forward to it. I might even tweet a picture live from the game on the Twitter account.
Was that an intentional diss?
Was that shots fired?
Yeah,
wow.
Like shots fired.
That sounds like shots fired because I have got PSG in a handicap bet.
How long did that take you to think about, Jake? 6 seconds?
To be honest with you, it took me a little while because there's not really much value you can get around Europe, to be honest. And
sorry. Also, who's the team you've doubled up with there?
I've never heard of Barcelona before.
Barcelona, I don't know if you've heard of them.
When you slagging off my pick of Barcelona,
I was slagging them off. Yep. And I watched that game, and Lewandowski looked like Lewandowski, and I should never have disrespected him whatsoever. So I've got PSG Barcelona -2 double now. Barcelona are playing Valladolid, and I think that they will absolutely smash them, to be honest. And the -2 handicap for that, I think, is value in that game. PSG, on the other hand, I've got Monaco at home. Now, Monaco got beat 4-1 last week. And PSG won, I think it was 6-1. They scored after 8 seconds. They just took the piss, to be honest, PSG. And I think that they'll do that again this weekend. I was going to throw in Bayern -2 and make it a treble. Farley, you've gone for Bayern -1 against Gladbach this weekend. I think that it's going to be
-1.
I know exactly, but I feel the point because I do rate Gladbach, to be honest.
Gladbach are a good side. Well, look, they're second in the Bundesliga at the moment to Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich obviously won all 3 games, whereas Gladbach have only got 7 points. But look, there are people who know a lot more about German football than me that are singing the praises of this Mönchengladbach team, and they've done a really good job because they've had Lilian Thuram's son. He was out in the cold last year, really playing badly, and he's come back into the team now and is absolutely ripping it up. So this does look like a team that are kind of are probably going to do quite well in the Bundesliga this year, potentially get top 4. I think that's what they're aiming at. But they do face Bayern Munich here at home. And Bayern Munich, just to go through this, if you've not been following the Bundesliga closely, we always joke about how it's basically a 1-team league. But this year, it's already been probably the worst it's ever been. 3 games in, 15 goals scored, 1 conceded. This just is ridiculous. And look, I think Gladbach are going to be the best team they've played so far. And they will give them a test. But when they've just been scoring like this, and in particular, they've been defending so well, I think -1 at 8-13 seems like it's one of those bets that the trend, everything is telling you, the trends are telling you to go that way. And I think you just need to follow it. It's not overly exciting, but I think it's where the trends are saying we should go.
You know what? I might try and get priced in the week, and I'll let us know next week if it's up, if it's still alive. That is, Bayern to go unbeaten this season. What kind of price do you reckon you'll get on that? 7-2
in the league.
It's going to be skinny, isn't it? It's not going to be a value play, but that's the level of like German football to me. I don't know if I get turned off by it. Like At least in some of
Really?
these other leagues we've mentioned. In Spain, you've got a few teams competing. PSG, to me, is dull. Sporting, having dug around in Portugal, it's not the most competitive, but there's at least a bit of an option. I think that I'd sooner watch PSG in the French league. I think there's more competition there than there is Bayern. That says something.
I think,
I agree.
to be fair, I think I think both Liga and the Bundesliga are very similar in that there's one team that is head and shoulders better than anyone, but the competition after that is actually really, really good. Like I do enjoy watching it. I think the French league in particular, I've slated it in the past, but this last sort of 18, 24 months, I think it's actually been really, really good. Like when you're not watching PSG, the games are really fun.
But we saw Dortmund at the weekend drop points, didn't we? We were 89th minute, 2-0 up, and they lost 3-2.
League done.
Crazy league.
It
Absolutely crazy league.
Feels pointless.
Well, speaking of getting done, there's nothing that beats losing an ante-post bet that you've had on all year. So I'm still burnt from Shackle Bonsoir a couple of years ago. That was one you gave me, Boz. I still think about it, 50-1, pulled out on the day of the race. But look, let's talk now. Boz is here to talk about racing ante-posts. And look, we had people asking last week, give us the Boz ante-posts. Here is your time.
So my two strands this week. One, I've been desperately mentioning when I've been on Sky Sports Racing how great it'd be for Baid to go for the Arc. I still don't think we're going to get him there, but they still haven't ruled it completely out. And he's, if we've got that 33-1 docket, if you followed my advice, that's still keeping me relatively happy at the moment. I mean, for context, he's around 4-1, not non-runner, no bet. He's even money, non-runner, no bet. So, yeah, I'm not panicking on that. Now, I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to mention the C word. And don't look panic, lads. It's Cheltenham, not the one you two dirty brains are thinking about.
I've slagged off Cheltenham enough, Boz. Please don't do it to the
I didn't want to get involved in the Cheltenham Festival during August. It's kind of one of my rules. I let other people take the silly prices. The problem is Cheltenham is a completely different beast to any other event. And all it takes is one of these tipping guys that do videos like this to go, oh, that's a wrong price. And 100 people steam in, have the tenner each way, and bookies will cut the price. Now, it probably won't happen in this market, but I want to put it up anyway. I want to talk about a horse of Alan King's called Edwardstone that I just really think when I had a very early glance at the markets, because I sort of put them away, I don't really understand why he's 16-1 for the Champion Chase. For context, this is a horse that last season ran, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. He won 5 starts. His first start at Warwick, he was brought down, which is a little bit unlucky. It's when another horse gets involved and takes yours out of the race, effectively. And then the only time he got beaten was at Aintree. And that was at the end of a really long season. And results can be a bit funny at Aintree. He was 4-7 favourite that day. I'm not losing any sleep over him getting beat by Gentleman de May that day, who's a similar sort of price if you do read literally into form. He acts on the course at Cheltenham. He doesn't mind the going, having won on good to soft numerous times. He's won on soft as well. He's won on heavy, albeit a forerunner affair at Market Raisin. So I'm not particularly worried what ground we get come Champion Chase Day. Alan King is a brilliant trainer. He'll get a really nice run at this race. And when I started looking at who else was in there at shorter prices, I started to pick a few holes. Energumen's your ante-post favourite. He won the race last year. He was a brilliant winner at Ascot as well. But I'm not particularly sold that he's a horse that I wouldn't want to be taking 5-2 for him to get to the festival, let alone win the Champion Chase, which I think will be more competitive this time around. Other horses to mention in there, Shishkin, who Nicky Henderson this week reported, returning after a bit of a weird season. He pulled up in the race last year, if you remember, having ran no kind of race. He's a 9-2 shot. Couldn't back him again. Happily leave him. Fernie Hollow, 8-1. Fernie Hollow was a brilliant horse till he got injured last year. He's an interesting contender, but Edwardstone at 16 is just an each-way play at a big price that I think will shorten through the winter. One of those that I've mentioned in front comes out with injury, which is entirely conceivable. I think he'll definitely be one that will go close. So there we go, 16-1, our first Cheltenham bet in the book. I feel absolutely disgusting for having a Cheltenham ante-post bet, but that's what you listeners have driven me to do. Jake, I think we need to change the subject quickly before I get pelted from the racing mates.
Yeah.
talk about something
what we'll do
different.
is change over. Yeah, we'll change over to the World Cup, which is going to happen in November. Now, England, Gareth Southgate himself, he's got a lot of difficult choices to make in terms of his squad. Now, Farley, I know we've discussed this in previous weeks where you've spoke about ante-post picks for Southgate's squad for the World Cup. What is taking your fancy this week?
I absolutely adore this market. So there's a couple I'm going to go through, and I think one of them, maybe the value has slightly gone, but Callum Wilson, he was 5-1 at the weekend after he scored against Man City. It's now into 5-2, and I'd still there's maybe a slight bit of value there if he stays fit, and I think that is a big if. I think he has real potential to go in that squad. You obviously, Boz mentioned it earlier, Marcus Rashford. It felt like Rashford might be back, and he's now evens to go. He was actually 6-4 yesterday when I was watching the game because I did double check, and that's already moved into evens. I'd say evens is still probably worth the punt. Maybe wait till Saturday. If he does well against Southampton, I think then you absolutely pounce. You take that number. And another one, and Boz, I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on this. And this is definitely more of an outside punt. But you got Eze at Crystal Palace, and this is a guy I think potentially my favourite player in the Premier League just to watch. He's such a joy to watch. But what I think could really set him apart is he's been playing a lot more centrally this season when I've watched Palace than I've really seen him in the past. And I think one thing England don't really have is somebody to take the ball out from the middle of the park into these attacking areas. I know you got someone like Mason Mount who can do that, but I think he's more of a passer than a guy who will dribble it out. And Eze would offer England something a little bit different there. At 6-1, we know Southgate did call him up before his previous injury that he had, and then obviously he wasn't able to take part in the squad, so he is in the manager's thinking. So that's definitely one. Boz, why don't you tell us about that now? We'll chat about some other players.
I love the shout. If it was a Summer World Cup and he had the full season, I think that 6-1 would be a steal. I've got a lot of concerns about how Gareth will pick this squad given where we are in the season. Eze, I actually think, I'm going to call it now, will have a better season than Michael Olise, who people seem to rate higher. I think Eze is the one to watch at Palace. I genuinely think he's a wizard on the ball, makes things happen. Some of his passing is very exceptional. And it's not that I don't like Olise, I really do. I just think the hype train's behind him. And actually, Eze is going to go about his business and get things done. 6-1 is a really fair price. But I'll throw a question back at you, Sam. Of the current England starting 11 or the kind of 14 players that are more or less nailed on to start, how many are having, albeit we've only had a few games, who's playing well? Because right now, I look at the likes of Declan Rice, and I've got West Ham fans blowing up my phone telling me that he's having shockers. I've got Trent playing games where he looks like he's forgotten how he can defend. I think Reece James is head and shoulders above him. Jake mentioned to me off air, he thought Kyle Walker's not having a great season. Like, where is this England quality coming? Oh, do you think they're holding back a little bit for their clubs with the World Cup, one eye in the World Cup, just sort of, more or less, 7 weeks before they're going to really be starting to focus on it?
They could be, I don't know. I think it is potentially that could be the case because it is surprising how it's the players in the Premier League who don't really look at the races are pretty much all English. I think we'll see. We'll see as these next weeks progress. But I don't know. I think you mentioned that, but I think from a betting perspective, we need to kind of look at these players who are out of form as opportunities to find a player who is in form that can maybe make this squad. And we kind of spoke about off air. Basically, at the left back position, it's Shaw and Chilwell. James Justin when they were both out. James Justin got the nod before getting injured in these sort of, I think it's June games. Was it June? Yeah, June games for England. And playing a right footer on the left, it didn't work for me. And that means I think there is very much big value in other left backs out there. Ryan Sessegnon, I think he's one to keep an eye on if he's playing particularly much. 4-1. You've got obviously Tyreek Mitchell of your club.
I love him, but he's too dull and boring. He won't get picked because he's not. People go, "Oh, Chilwell's got attacking threat. Shaw gets forward," and that's what's going to annoy me. I don't think Southgate will pick him. I think he's too fairly steady Eddie, and I think he'll go. Listen, we know what Southgate's like. I'm convinced he will not go near picking someone like Tariq Mitchell, even for the squad. Annoyingly, I really hope I'm wrong, Sam. At the price I think it should be.
I think there are some interesting ones to look at here. We've got a 26-man squad, remember, this time. So we've got those extra 3 places to play with. You've got, the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White made that big money move to Nottingham Forest. He's 20-1. It's not out of the realms of possibility. Anthony Gordon, we talked about him earlier. I wouldn't bet it, but it's 11-1. If he played really, really well for Chelsea, does he go up there? And I still think with, after Monday night, if Maguire's benched for the majority of the season, I think he would still go with England, even if he only plays a few games, just because of what he's done previously. But it does open up the possibility for these other guys. And I mean, you got someone like Tomori is 5-4, better than even money. He was brilliant last year. Good for England, actually, in June when he did play. Connor Cody's better than even money. There's a lot of talented players. Dan Burn, even, I think, has been good for Newcastle. There are a lot of players out there. I don't know if, Jake, is there anybody that you think could really take, and even, sorry to interrupt, Ivan Toney, 6-1. I mean,
I like Jack Harrison at 6-1 too, to be honest. He's come in from 28-1 last week.
Oh, that's an overreaction to one game.
Joint most assists in the Premier League, though, hasn't he? So you talk about players on form. He's got the joint most assists.
That's a tough position to crack into, I think, though.
Is he not got the same chances as Eze? Southgate seems the type of manager who'd be like, right, I'll take whoever's on form, to be honest. And
do you think he is, Jake? I think this is a different World Cup. If he'd had a full summer with these players, completely agree. I think he goes with but this has got to be as well. And Sam, we will move on from this, but I want one more question in here. Do you think this is Southgate's last big tournament with England? Do you think he moves on after this? I know he's got a contract, but ignore all that stuff. Like,
if we don't get to the semis, he's gone, I think. Yeah. I think if we don't get to the semi-finals, a lot of England fans will be on his back massively.
The one thing I'd say is it's got to the point where I think when he was appointed, a lot of people had reservations. I definitely had reservations. And I think people with these recent poor performances, they're starting to look back at what they thought before and think maybe this has been a fluke, which, to be honest, it hasn't been a fluke. And I don't know how you could think that. But some people are thinking that. Then you've got the whole politics side of things that I know just through going to games, I know some people do not appreciate that because of their beliefs. And it's felt for a couple of months now like there's been a little undercurrent of people wanting him to mess things up so they can bring him down. And after that game at the Wolves Stadium against Hungary, it felt like, Christ, he might not even see the night out at this rate. So I think they'd be mad to get rid of him before the World Cup and it won't happen. But I think he has to do well or he's in a lot of trouble.
Interesting. Well, from one high-octane pressured environment to another, and it's the cockpit of a Formula One car. And Jake's our resident Formula One nut. Jake, I'll be honest, I've been a bit in and out this year with F1. Felt like it was going to be the Mac show. Then Ferrari seemed to turn up and suddenly have a decent car. Then they seem to be the Sven-Goran Eriksson of strategy and absolutely fuck it up every other week when I was watching.
Blimey, boss.
I know someone. Honestly, Farley, no, I couldn't care less because is as a neutral that doesn't want to see Max Verstappen just win the title by very early. We don't want to see Man City style title wins before Easter, and that's what sport. You want to see competition, and when Ferrari shoot their own feet off with some stupid things, it really winds me up. So I've been a bit in and out, but that's where I am with F1. Jake, where are we racing this weekend, and what should we be looking out for?
This weekend, Boz, we're in Belgium, so we've just had a month off. Basically, the mid-season breaks taking place. Now, for the race itself, it's just a little bit of value that I've seen, to be honest. And George Russell to get pole at 12-1 is that value. Now, last year he was driving for Williams. He was second in qualifying, which was unbelievable. It was arguably the lap of the season. You could make a case for it. It was definitely in the top 3 out of all the drivers. And that day was wet too. Now, looking at the weather conditions this weekend, set to be raining both Saturday and Sunday. So wet conditions, he's in a better car, he's in the Mercedes. The Mercedes as well has had changes over the break too. So we're expecting to see an even better Mercedes car after this break. So 12-1 for Russell to get pole in a lot better car than the Williams that he was in last year. Again, he was second in qualifying at Spa last year. It was raining like it's going to do again this weekend, according to the reports. I just think 12-1's a massive price.
No, fair enough. I'll be keeping an eye on it this weekend, I must say. And yeah, F1 is interesting. The calendar getting bigger and bigger, and obviously the Drive to Survive stuff definitely captured me back into it. But I don't know, they've got to do a bit more. The sprint races are interesting for qualifying, but for me, unless I'm having a flutter like you on that qualifying market, I'm probably not going to sit and watch it. I think that's an element of F1 that could definitely improve. Well, one thing we always love is your questions and comments. So do get them in, because we put ourselves on the line every week with our various opinions and views. And we didn't have too many questions this week, but we do love hearing from them. You can tweet them, drop them a comment on the YouTube video, and we'll put them up the following week. But something I know people had asked in the past, and I want to ask the guys. Do you bet to win money? Do you bet for entertainment? It's a really interesting take, this. Jake, I'm going to throw that one at you first of all. Is a bet that you place for entertainment purposes or to try and win money? Or I suppose both?
I'd say a little bit of both, to be honest. I think it's more entertainment because I do enjoy the games when I have had a bet on it, to be honest. Like, if it's a Monday Night Football, I'll put a fiver and just do little small requester bets and stuff like that. The reason why I say to win money is because I very rarely do like bets on those games that are like under 50-1, to be honest. Like, I'll always do like proper stinky 200-1 requester bets and things like that, bet builders, just for a bit of value and just to make the game a bit more entertaining. Yeah, so a little bit of both for me.
That's interesting. Sam, I know you're quite a value hunter as such. You'd be a Martin Lewis of betting, I think, if I, shopping around for best price and making sure that you're a bit more disciplined, I think, in some respects, in that sense.
Yeah, I'd say I'm not always disciplined. In particular, after a big win, I'll inevitably waste some of the profits, just trying to hit the Vegas bet kind of thing. But I'm quite disciplined. I keep a spreadsheet with every bet I do, work out the returns on it. I can track my losses, all my winnings, but losses is the reason I do it, purely because you need to know when you're in a bad run and you can just make adjustments and just stop gambling. I think that's very important to be able to do that. And also the other thing having a spreadsheet does, so I've gone off on a bit of tangent here. I track bet types, so I can track bet type success rate. For example, bet builders, very high margin bet for the bookies. I am awful at bet builders. The amount of money I've sunk into them and compared to what I've taken out is just ridiculous. But if you get me on under 2.5 goals, my record is incredible. So it's good to know this. I've now been doing this for nearly 2 years now. So I've now got like a really, really good bit of data that I can look back, and every now and again I like to go on there, just have a little look at what I've been good at, what I've been bad at, and then use that to kind of inform my strategy going forward. So that said, I do think it has to be fun, and I think ultimately the most important thing about betting is when you put on a bet, if you think this, I can't have this lose, or I'm going to be eating beans for a week, that's when you just need to knock it on the head. It's not worth it. We can all get caught up in things. I know, look, if I go to the races, I'll probably, be a bit more stupid than I would otherwise. But ultimately, it is about fun. So it's about kind of, for me, watching the footy, having a bet on. I love just doing a little overnight bet on the US sports, just waking up and seeing how it's gone. So that's it for me. How about you, boss?
I think the angle I take from that, from both answers, is whether it's for entertainment, whether it's because you sat there thinking you're going to turn a profit in 12 months' time if you have 100 bets and you think you're beating margin. I think it's got to be about the fun of it, and it's got to have you've got to have a play. Like, I enjoy looking at horse racing handicaps because to me it's a puzzle to solve. Looking at my record on them, I can just about break even most years. I'm not that great at them unless I'm getting really early prices and things. So for me, I think there's definitely a combination of both. And I think both of you have hinted at the responsible gambling side of it, but it has got to be fun. And listen, none of us can sit here and go and back a 1-7 shot to win serious dough. So you do have to look at multiples. But the one thing I think, and Sam, I've taken this from your sort of learnings a bit, is looking at where you're profitable. I'm profitable in one area of football and one area only in the last 2 seasons, and that's card betting in play. Like, it's clearly I've clearly got some sort of ability or some sort of, I'm better at that. Now, potentially some people say, oh, but how good will that, have you got an edge? I don't think I've got an edge necessarily. I just think I'm doing better at that side of betting. Potentially it's because you're engaged watching a game rather than pre-event where maybe you haven't done as much homework. It's a really interesting question. It's one that I'm quite glad we posed to you, but it does come back to the main overbearing point, which is it's got to be fun and you've got to do it responsibly. There's no point. Don't be chasing losses because you're only going to end up one way, and it's not what we want from anyone, really. Right. Well, that brings us to, I think, the treble. Is that correct, Sam? We've got to try and find the treble for the weekend.
It is. The weekend treble. This is what we do. We pick 3 things. It's our favourite bet of the weekend. And I'll be honest with you, this is a beauty. It's over 14-1 for the treble here. So, look, Boz, I think you should go last, seeing as you have what I'd say is the meatiest leg on this. But why don't you start us off, Jake, with the first one?
Yeah, I feel a little bit guilty with this pick because I know both of you have discussed that you don't really fancy Brentford to win this week against Everton, but I've gone for Brentford to win. I think that, again, it's an Everton side who I just think Brentford are better this season, to be honest, and the whole Anthony Gordon transfer will be looming over them. If it does go through, it might have already gone through by the weekend, to be honest. So I just think 21-20, they're a big price, and that's my pick for this weekend.
My pick is even money, and going to a sport we've not actually had on the pod yet, which is rugby union. This week, Argentina travel to New Zealand to face the All Blacks, and the line is pretty damn big. Argentina plus 22 on the spread. I think this is huge value. New Zealand, I mean, they won the last game against South Africa, which was impressive, but they got hammered by them the week before that. They played Ireland in a test series like a month or so ago, and frankly, it was embarrassing. And this New Zealand team is the worst I can remember it in a recent memory. And weirdly, just because of a little side job I do, I've actually been watching a lot of New Zealand rugby games over the last few months. And I just don't think this team, what concerns me most is they've lost. There was always that thing with the All Blacks, right, where the other team already looks beaten when they step on the field because they know they've got to play, the Harlem Globetrotters of rugby effectively. And this team have just lost the aura. They don't look that good. And I'm not overly worried about them. So they've been doing badly, I think, in the last 12 months, pretty bad. I think Ian Foster's close to losing his job. And then you got Argentina, who they played Australia, both in Argentina earlier this month. They absolutely hammered Australia 48-17 in one game and lost the other one 41-26. So they are a team that shows some variance. And as always, going to New Zealand is hard. But we saw Ireland did it brilliantly, and it has lost the edge, I'm sorry to say. And with a 22-point lead, I just think Argentina, that's real value, because I can't trust this New Zealand team in their current state to be anything like at their best. If they're at their best, they will win, they will cover that. But the evidence to me suggests that they are not at their best regularly enough for you to not back Argentina there. So that's the bet for me at evens.
Good news, folks. You're back in the room and we can stop thinking about egg chasing. Oh, my God. Not my bag. Not my bag. Sam knows his stuff, in fairness. It's not him that I find boring, but that sport. The one thing I would say is Argentina are definitely one of the more exciting rugby sides to watch. They play kind of a different type of rugby to some of the Northern Hemisphere sides that I find a bit droll. So fair play, Sam, but yeah, not my bag. Good news is I found an 11-4 shot to really get this bet pumped up in price. Gabriel Jesus to have an assist against Fulham. 11-4. I think that's a big price. He's had 2 out of the last 3 games where he's delivered this. So instantly I'm thinking, okay, that's interesting. He's playing a Fulham side that ship goals. He's in an Arsenal side where they do seem to share things round. I thought 11-4 was a massive price for him to have an assist. He's not the most selfish of players, having come from Man City where he's had to square the ball every other week. I think he's a huge price. So that takes us to what? 14-1, Farley, for the treble?
Just over 14-1, which I think is fantastic value and, pretty good time to wrap this up as well. I just want to say one thing before we go. You will have noticed if you're a Premier League keno like us guys, there are games midweek next week. And what we are going to have in store for you, obviously Sam is going to be sunning himself, drinking Superbox and kicking off with the Portuguese Ultras. But myself and Jake, we're going to be back. It'll probably be live some point on Monday for you. And we'll be here. We'll just talk about those Premier League games midweek in particular. So please join us for that. But remember, if you follow us on social media @OddsPod, or you follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or indeed have subscribed on YouTube, then you'll see that show. It'll pop up. You'll know it's there. So please do that. But guys, it's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, it's been superb. And make sure you give us a follow on all the platforms above.
Give us a like and get your comments in. We quite enjoy seeing Farley get roasted on social media. So if we can do that again, up the Cheltenham town, and we'll certainly try and deliver you some winners. Have a great week.